Hello, loves. Your girl Carrie here. Today, I want to talk about a word that so many people misinterpret, and that word is addiction. A lot of people, when they hear someone say, "Oh, I'm a recovering addict," or "I was an addict," they automatically think that they were into drugs. And truthfully, you could be an addict of anything. You could be, if someone's addicted to gambling, they're a gambling addict. If someone is addicted to chewing their fingernails, they have an addiction to chewing their fingernails. There was also like a video or like a show that was kind of like, I don't know if it was on like A&E TV or something, but it was called My Strange Addiction. And people on there were like eating cushions out of couches. Someone, I remember seeing one where like they would go to people's homes and like take the vent, like dryer vent, and like put it in their pocket. Like it was their weird addiction. And that's true. So many people can be addicted to so many things, but we automatically assume that it means drugs. And why I bring this up is because at the end of the day, the addiction actually is not the problem. It's the solution. And the addiction that I want to talk to you about today is the trauma bond. Many don't understand that this is an addiction, and it's actually a very crucial addiction because it's honestly like taking a cocaine addiction and a heroin addiction and putting them together. And the trauma bond addiction is the addiction for love. Might as well face it, you're addicted to love. Okay, singing was not my career, obviously. But anyway, yes, you are basically an addict of love. Whether you're seeking love, you want to feel loved, you want to give love, you have an abundance of love, that is your addiction. So let's talk about the trauma bond and how it is an addiction. So in the beginning, when the individual love bombs you and when they reel you in with all of the promises and the affection and emotion, and they raise that dopamine so incredibly high, you have an intense attraction to them. And this intense high is what they say is equivalent to a heroin high. Well, then this intense attraction becomes a deep attachment, almost like you feel like you can't let go. But truly underneath that, it's an addiction. It's the mind and the body craving and being conditioned for that constant chase of the high. And then once they reel you in and they have that attachment connected, suddenly they criticize you, they start to distance themselves, they show disvalue, they possibly even show some abuse, maybe not just physical, but mental abuse, emotional abuse. They start playing games with your head. This then becomes a low. And in time, your brain is getting conditioned to that hot and that cold, that high and that low, which is also what they call the fight and the flight. In time, this becomes an obsession because you're constantly craving that reward. You want it to go back to the beginning from where that high initially took place. This is called intermittent reinforcement, is the technical term for this high and this low. This addiction is no different than one who is addicted to gambling and they go to the slot machine, or one who does scratch off tickets or, lottery tickets. They go to the store, they win something big, maybe $1,000 or $10,000, and then it's like they can't stop playing because they keep chasing that high to in turn win again. How our brain functions is based upon pattern and experiences, as well as beliefs and traditions and chemicals. During the good times, the love bombing times, the good emotional times, dopamine and serotonin are released from the brain. And those are the feel-good chemicals, telling our brain that this is okay, we're safe, it feels good. Same kind of chemicals that are released during intimacy. Then on the flip side of it, when things are going bad or you're in danger or you're in an unsafe environment, the adrenaline and the cortisol are what are released from your brain. And that basically enhances and alerts your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex to say, hey, alert, we are unsafe at this point. And when you go from such extremes to releasing those chemicals from high into low, your brain starts to grasp onto that pattern that relief comes after pain, which then is the reward. So that is what keeps you addicted to going back and to wanting more of it, because you're wanting that reward. The reward ultimately is the addiction. You start to confuse that with love. The high is the love bombing, the intense attraction. Then you drop to the low, which is the distance, the criticism, the confusion, the abuse. Then you start craving the addiction when it's gone. So you try to fix it. You want to, go back to the beginning. You want to always seek back to when the love bombing was there and when the fighting didn't take place. And then when they do come back and they open that door again, that basically is the reward. And then it just repeats that cycle until you finally have had enough and you, in turn, love yourself more. You break out of that addiction. The high that you feel, though, in these toxic relationships isn't love, it's relief. And you're getting relief from the anxiety. You're feeling validation after rejection. You are basically getting hope after uncertainty. You want to feel worthy, and your worth and value you feel is coming after they disvalue you. So you're looking for that reward again. And that is why it feels so much more intense than actual real love. And the intensity is unsafe. You are craving that safety again, which is when they come and do the love bombing and reel you back in. You're conditioned in the cycle. Breaking from the trauma bond is so incredibly important because you break that cycle. However, it is very, very important that you don't jump into another person. Your mind is going to want you to do that. It is going to fall onto that codependency that you need someone to fill that space, to basically start the addiction all over again. It's like going from a different store and buying another set of scratch-off tickets. You didn't really break the habit. You're just going to a different place to purchase them. It's the same thing. If you don't break that conditioning of that trauma bond, you will just fall into that same trap again. And not only that, but if you actually receive someone that is healthy and not putting you through that trauma bond, that calm will actually feel unfamiliar. So you'll want to go something that is chaotic again, because chaos is what you interact with connection. And consistency will feel boring, to be honest. And predictability will feel like you have like lack of chemistry because all of them are not giving you that intense situation, that high and that low, that addiction, like your past trauma bond experiences have been. Being a survivor myself of the trauma bond, I do remember one of my very good friends from fifth grade that I still talk to this day. Her name's Sarah. And she said to me, you of all people, like, how did this happen to you? Because you were always such a strong individual. She's like, all of us always wanted to go to parties and places that we were unfamiliar with you, because you made it apparent that you made us feel comfortable. You would break the ice if that was the case. And the truth is, if you're sitting here beating yourself up like I once was, saying, how can I be so stupid? Like, I didn't go through all this education and go to where I am to be so dumb to fall into this trap. I would do so much infliction on myself. And honestly, self-aware people are the ones that get hooked the most, because high empathetic people, you try to understand them instead of exiting the situation. In highly responsible individuals, you try to fix what you didn't break. And like I said, the high empaths, you try to cure the pain, because at one point in time in your life, you endured so much pain. So you don't want anyone else in this world to feel the pain that you once felt, especially if it's under your own wing, it's under your care and your guidance. You want to make sure everyone is comfortable and nobody feels that pain and suffering like you once did. Self-awareness, you turn inward instead of outward too. You blame yourself, or you look inward as to what you're doing wrong versus what the individual is doing wrong. Chances are as well that you have a very high tolerance for discomfort, because you know what it feels to be uncomfortable. And so that makes you stay even longer, because you're trying to make comfort out of uncomfortable situations. Most likely your strengths became your trap. Your loyalty became your self-sacrifice, and your resilience became your own toxicity, your own toxic endurance. And why healing is so important is so that you don't repeat this with someone else. Healing doesn't mean that you need to understand them. It means you need to retrain your nervous system to know that this is not normal, that this is an addiction. And now here is the part that many don't tell you. You are coming out of an active addiction, so you will be sick. This was when I almost lost my life. I had not only dropped extreme weight, but I was losing my hair. I was in the hospital 22 times. I had massive panic attacks. I was on watch for a stroke. I kept bleeding out of my one side of my nostril for my blood pressure being so high. You are going through an active withdrawal. So you will go through the same stages as an individual who is coming out of a drug withdrawal and is dope sick. They want that drug just to feel good. Your body has learned how to function on those high crazy chemical levels of the good and the bad and the high and the low. So now when your body is removed from those different chemicals, releases, and not having those chemical releases that it's used to, your body basically goes into shock. And so you do need to get some sort of therapy, you know, something, some kind of medication to help you withdraw from this trauma bond, depending on how long that you have been in it. Because like I said, you will be in an active withdrawal, just like someone who is coming out of a drug addiction. And if your trauma bond is being released from someone who was abusive to you, like a malignant narcissist, it is very, very crucial. Not only do you find safety for yourself, because the narcissist will see that they are losing control, and that is when they will really put the intensity on the abuse, and they will literally go insane, and do such insane things. But also for you on the health side of things, because you're going through that quote unquote drug withdrawal, we'll just say, this is when your adrenaline and your cortisol is pumping at an all-time high, because it's craving that drug, and then it's also in fear from the narcissist doing whatever crazy actions that they do. And this is when I was back in my studies back in 2022, there was a statistic that said this was when 57% of individuals coming from narcissistic abuse and out of the trauma bond end up taking their lives. And the reason being, and this is why even individuals do take their lives, is when you are in situations that you are in that intense cortisol and that intense adrenaline release in your brain, it is opening your amygdala, and your amygdala is the first responder. The amygdala is the one that I call it the freak out organ. So basically it's the freak out function that says, hold on, it's alerting your body that we are literally in danger. You got to run, you got to jump, you got to hide, you got to whatever it is. Like in an accident, it's your amygdala that goes right away. Or if you've ever been in like a situation where you've argued with someone and you've right away said a bunch of bad things to them, and then it's like 2 hours later or maybe even the next day and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said all that. Like I should have probably maybe said this or that. So the amygdala is, like I said, the first responder that basically freaks out. Well, when you have that cortisol and that adrenaline pumping at an all-time high, it never lets up. So it never allows the prefrontal cortex then to go into play. And the prefrontal cortex then is the second responder. And that's the one that says, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or maybe I should have went here, or, it's basically I call it the second chance reminder. So it's the calm down. It's the one that makes the logical thinking. Well, when an individual is in such enhanced stressful situations and they have that cortisol and that adrenaline, they never let the amygdala go down, and they never allow that prefrontal cortex to kick in. So they are in that mindset of, it'll never work out, I'm never going to survive, I'll never get through this. It just doubt. And that's where they end up taking their lives, because they have that amygdala making that decision for them. So it's very, very imperative that you see a psychiatrist, some sort of help to chemically imbalance the chemicals that were obviously not in balance, but also it can be life threatening if you do not get the help that you need, because your amygdala will be making the crazy, insane decisions based on the feeling of unsafe, environments, and having that alertness and not allowing that prefrontal cortex, which is the logical thinker, to kick in. And this is, like I said, when many people take their lives in any kind of active addiction because they are not allowing that the chemicals to balance themselves out. In closing, I want you to understand this is a true addiction. You are not in love with them. You are in love with the reward. You are in love with the chase. Once you break from the addiction, once you break from the trauma bond, everything else will literally disgust you. It is going to be hard. It is going to be very hard. But I want you to understand that this is what is needed for you to find true love and the love that you deserve. They do not love you. Anyone that loves you would never cause you harm and would never disrupt your peace. This is an act of addiction. And once you break the addiction, you will then break that bond of the uncertainty and the toxicity and find the love that you deserve.